There is someone you grew up with, somebody you saw every single day before you were old enough to remember any of it. Ancient humans had exactly the same thing happen to them. It is the reason you are here at all. But you never decided any of it. Nobody sat you down and explained it. It was already finished by the time you were old enough to have opinions about anything. Whoever that person is, some part of you filed them under never years ago and quietly locked the drawer. Here's the part that should stop you. Ancient humans had no genetics, no family records, no word for cousin, no law, no priest, no science of any kind, and for 300,000 years they avoided inbreeding anyway. Not because they knew it was dangerous, they had no idea it was dangerous. They couldn't have. Something else was doing the work. Hold on to one number while we go. There is a place in Israel where nearly 3,000 people grew up together. Same rooms, same houses, from the day they were born. Somebody later counted how many of them married each other. That number is the whole story, and I'll give it to you in a few minutes. First, why any of this mattered. Every one of us carries mistakes, small broken instructions scattered through the code that builds a body. Most of them do nothing because you carry two copies of nearly everything, and a working copy covers for a broken one. That safety net only holds while the two copies come from different places. Marry close and the copies start matching, both broken in the same spot, nothing left to cover. In a small band, a few generations of that and the children stop surviving. Not dramatically, quietly. A few more that don't make it each year until there is no band left. So the pressure was enormous, and it ran for hundreds of thousands of years. The question is how a species with no science solved it. In 1891, a Finnish man named Edward Westermarck published a book about marriage and put forward an idea almost nobody liked. He said there is no rule, no instinct that recognizes a relative, no hidden sense that reads blood. What happens instead, he said, is much dumber than that, and much better. If you spend your early childhood in close quarters with another child, sharing food, sharing sleep, constantly underfoot, then your body quietly decides, permanently, that this person is not a possibility. Not a decision, a setting, installed before you can read. And here is why it's brilliant. The system never has to know who your relatives actually are. For almost all of human history, the small children constantly underfoot were your relatives. Proximity was a good enough guess. Evolution didn't build a detector, it built a shortcut. But the idea sank. For most of the next century, the far more famous view was the opposite one, that people are drawn to their own families and have to be held back. Rules, taboos, punishment, culture restraining nature. Westermarck said the exact reverse. Nature was already handling it. The rules came afterwards, writing down something people were mostly doing anyway. Two theories, opposite predictions, and no way to test either one because you cannot take 1,000 children and assign who they grow up beside. That's the trouble with this question. The experiment you would need is one nobody would ever be allowed to run, except that twice, for reasons that had nothing to do with science, somebody ran it anyway. The first one was in Israel. From the early 1900s, communal farms called kibbutzim raised their children a particular way, not in family homes, in children's houses. A group of kids, roughly the same age, living together, eating together, sleeping in the same room, from infancy all the way to adulthood. They were not related, different parents, different families, no blood between them at all. If Westermarck was wrong, nothing unusual should happen here. These are unrelated young people who know each other extremely well. Some of them should pair off. In 1971, a researcher named Joseph Shepher went through the marriage records. 2,769 marriages among people raised in those houses. Here is your number. Out of all of them, not one was between two people who had been in the same group continuously from birth. Not a few, not a small percentage, none. And nobody had forbidden it. There was no rule against it. Some of these communities actively hoped it would happen. The young people simply didn't see each other that way, and when they were asked about it afterwards, they kept saying the same thing. It would feel like something between siblings. Except they weren't siblings. They had only been small in the same room. The second experiment ran in Taiwan, and it ran for centuries. There was a marriage custom where a family took in a very young girl and raised her alongside the boy she would one day marry. The two of them grew up in the same household from early childhood. The anthropologist Arthur Wolfe worked through decades of household records for those marriages and set them against ordinary ones. They failed. Far more often, roughly 3 times the divorce rate, around a third fewer children, more affairs, more separations, more of every measure of a marriage that isn't working. The couples were not related. Both families wanted it to work. The entire society was arranged around making it work. And it didn't, because of something that had already happened to both of them before either was old enough to object. So the setting is real. Grow up close and the door closes, which leaves one problem. If everyone around you is off the table, where does anybody find anyone? In 2011, an anthropologist named Kim Hill and his colleagues published a study in the journal Science, looking at how hunter-gatherer bands are actually put together. 32 different societies, real people living now in the closest arrangement we have to the old one. The assumption had always been that a band is one big extended family. It isn't. Most of the people you would be living with are not close relatives at all. Parents, brothers, sisters, children, they make up only a small slice of the group. The rest are in-laws, distant connections, and people with no blood link to you whatsoever. A human band is mostly strangers who decided to stay, and that only works one way. People have to keep moving. Every generation, somebody walks out of the group they were born into and goes to live among people they have never met. Sometimes the young women, sometimes the young men. It depends on the society, but somebody goes. That's the other half of the system. The feeling closes the door at home. The leaving opens one somewhere else. This wasn't a rule anybody invented. This was a species quietly solving a problem in its own genetics that it would not understand for another 300,000 years. So here you are, same setting, still running. You are carrying a list of people you could never see that way, and you did not write it. It was written by whoever happened to be nearby when you were 3, which is why it sometimes gets things wrong now. Step-siblings who met at 6 and feel like family, with no blood between them at all. Childhood best friends, where one of them spends years wondering why the other never noticed. The setting isn't reading anybody's DNA. It never was. It's reading who was in the room. Everybody grows up believing their attractions are theirs, personal, chosen, some kind of statement about who they are, and a great deal of it is. But underneath all of it, there is a much older layer, finished before you had language, built by a species that could not read to solve a problem it could not see. It has been working the entire time, silently, without ever asking you. For 300,000 years, you are not broken, you are not weak, you are just ancient. Who did you grow up around that you could never see any other way? Put it in the comments. I want to know how many of us have the same answer. And if this explains something you'd never thought to question, hit like and subscribe for more of the ancient reasons behind your modern brain.